Hello everyone, it's another D-Day today, and that means Definition Day, and today's topic is Hyperlexia. Sino kaya sa inyo makakahula kung tungkol saan ito just from hearing the words hyper and lexia? But don't worry kung hindi nyo alam, because I'll tell you what I know in just a bit. Kaya tara, usap tayo, let's get talking. Hi at mabuhay tayong lahat. For those who are new here, I'm Teacher Kaye and I'm a certified speech-language pathologist. Today's topic is hyperlexia. So in medical terminology, ginagamit natin ang salitang hyper to talk about something that is above or beyond or excessive or above normal. And lexia is used to refer to reading. So taking those two words together, this term is used to describe children, usually younger than 5 years old, who are very advanced in their reading skills. Like unusually early na natututo silang magbasa. So before we talk about more characteristics of hyperlexia, pag-usapan muna kasi natin kung ano yung typical patterns of reading development sa bata. So with neurotypical children, so I've already talked about this term neurotypical. Ang ibig sabihin lang nito ay based on the majority of children in the world, meron tayong typical patterns na nakikita of development. So you are neurotypical if sumasama ka doon sa usual patterns na nakikita. So for neurotypical children, their functional communication develops muna. So that can be using their gestures, using their oral or their spoken language bago sila matutong makapagbasa. By around 3 or 4 years old, that's when they start becoming more ready to recognize alphabet and even sometimes numbers. By around 5 years old pa lang nila matututunan yung alphabetic principle, which is the concept of recognizing letters and associating them with the proper sounds in a language. And usually by around 7 years old, dito talaga nila naiintindihan kung paano i-decode ang mga symbols that we use in written communication. Also, for typically developing children, dapat ang reading ay tinuturo. Very explicit na tayo tuturo natin. Ito yung letter at ito yung accompanying sound. Kaya di ba we have school. And kaya alam kong maraming mga parents na worried na paano ko ituturo yung reading sa anak ko because kailangan talaga siyang ituro. Now, having given you the neurotypical patterns, ang naoobserbahan sa mga children with hyperlexia are something like 1-year-old pa lang or 18 months old pa lang, nakakapag-sight read na sila ng words. For example, like cat or dog. So parang napaka-advanced naman nila matuto magbasa. Now, paano naman natin malalaman kung wow, wala, sobrang talino lang talaga ng bata or kung hyperlexia na ito? So here are 4 of the biggest characteristics that we look for para masabi nating hyperlexia. Number 1, they can read words aloud pero hindi pa sila nakakagamit ng other ways of communicating via gestures, via spoken language. Number 2, they can read words aloud pero parang yung binasa nila, hindi naman nila naiintindihan kung anong ibig sabihin. And generally, they have poorer comprehension or receptive language skills, like hindi mo rin siya mautusan. Or they have problems learning other skills. For example, hirap na hirap silang mag-piece together ng picture puzzle, for example. Number 3, kapag hindi mo naman tinuruan magbasa, pero one day, wow, biglang nagbabasa na lang siya. So, has taught themselves how to read. And usually, mapapansin din nating accompanying behavior dito ay yung echolalia. I have a video on echolalia if you want to check that out. But basically, it's repeating words and sometimes phrases to themselves over and over. Rote learning po ang usually ginagamit nila sa kagustuhan nilang matutong magbasa. And number 4, if you notice na mas interesado sila sa mga books or looking at newspapers or any reading materials over any other toys. So I don't mean that they like books, they are hyperlexic. No, it's that kahit na anong ibigay mo sa kanilang other toys, hindi nila masyadong pinapansin pero laging paulit-ulit. Sometimes they show fixative behaviors like medyo obsessed yung interest nila in their alphabet blocks or their number blocks, etc. All of these, if napansin nyo to, between 2 to 4 years old. So, like I said, dapat younger than 5 years old because by 5 years old, medyo expected nga naman na matututo na yung mga bata magbasa. But if you notice any of these before 5 years old, then all of these may be characteristics of hyperlexia. Now, there are no standardized tests to diagnose hyperlexia, and hyperlexia is not a medical diagnosis. So a professional will only really be able to determine if this is hyperlexia by looking at the child's skills, what is missing, what seems imbalanced, at kung paano nagbabago yung mga patterns of the behavior through time. Importante po yung developmental. Because it's possible that later on in their development, parang pumapantay lang na naman yung skills nila with other children. So parang nag-fade yung hyperlexic characteristics niya. Meron ding different scientists that have studied these and have tried to classify hyperlexia into 3 or 2 different classifications. But I won't get into that now. But in case you're interested, if you're a geek like me, I'll put all my related resources and the links and the journal articles that I read below. So now that I've given you these 4 characteristics, gusto ko naman sa inyong magkwento ng specific examples of my own experience with clients with hyperlexia. So I had a client na non-verbal, hindi talaga siya nagsasalita. Tapos nagulat na lang ako na one day I kept saying, point the cat, point the cat. And I was expecting ang ituturo niya yung picture ng cat that I had out. Pero ang tinuturo niyang cat ay yung word label on top that I didn't even think na mapapansin niya because children don't usually mind the word labels until later. Pero laging every word that I said, yung word label ang ituturo niya imbis na yung picture of the cat. And so I tried something else na parang we read a story after, tapos pinapahanap ko sa kanya, okay, point the cat. Nasaan yung cat? Meow, meow, point the cat. So wala siyang kaide-ideya, hindi niya ma-point kung nasaan yung cat. Pero kapag nakita niya yung word na cat, na ituturo niya yung word. So eventually, this client of mine started talking. So meron na siyang spoken language, nakakasabi na siya ng some words, even phrases. Pero meron siyang mga random i-blurt out like 5, 6X, 88555 or something like that. So, tinanong ko kasi yung mommy, meron siyang inuulit-ulit na sequence of numbers. Tapos yun, sabi ng mommy, wait lang, password ko yan. So, they can be very good at memorizing things like plate numbers or sometimes titles of books. Pero, hindi nila magamit yung information na yun. It is merely memorized information. Now, here's another fact about hyperlexia. It is commonly associated with ASD or Autism Spectrum Disorder. Now, don't be scared agad because it doesn't mean that if you're hyperlexic, automatically may autism ka. No, let me clarify. But nakikita nila in studies that 84% of hyperlexics are on the spectrum. Many of them exhibit the same characteristics of children with autism, like some of them have sensory integration problems, they have repetitive behaviors, they have some sort of rigidities and need for routines and those kinds of things. If you want to check out my episodes on autism, just look at the link that is flashing above. It is also very common for the autistic to learn different skills in the atypical pattern, hindi sa karaniwang pattern of development. And it doesn't mean it's automatically disadvantageous. It's just different. Kaya nga neurodivergent. Now, the greatest thing about hyperlexia is that is another way na pwede kang mag-reach out to a child who is having difficulty communicating. Use their special interest and their special skill for recognizing letters and recognizing numbers sometimes and being able to read as visual supports para mas matulungan nyo pa sila and you can reach out to them in more ways. In the same way na ginamit ko doon sa batang I realized could read some of the words but did not know what they meant. Pero dahil nababasa niya yung cat, it made it easier for me to relate the word cat to the concept of cat. So dumadami yung modes of ways that I could cue the child kasi nakakabasa nga siya, nakaka-decode siya ng letters. So the important things for you to do now with the words that they can read is to be able to help them make associations. Help them categorize, okay, kapag nakita ko tong word na to, ang mga pwedeng ibig sabihin nito ay this and this and this. You can check out my episode on categories or using associations to help teach children. For the children who can actually already read sentences and full stories but have problems comprehending them, this is a good opportunity for them to read maybe one chunk of a message first and then i-discuss mo with them or i-reenact mo with them. So using social stories will be very, very effective and beneficial. Also, kapag may nabasa sila pero hindi nila maintindihan yung cause and effect. You can start talking about reasoning skills. Ask them a lot of WH questions. I also have an episode on that. So I just want to highlight there's lots of things about hyperlexia that you can use to communicate more with your child. And like many other conditions or syndromes in the medical world, napaka-complex nitong topic na to. So this is just a very short summary about hyperlexia. And if there's anything else you want to find out, feel free to ask me and I'll try to research and address it for you. Pero dyan na muna tayo magtatapos ngayon. If you found this helpful, please show me with a like and share it with your friends or anyone that you think may need it. At kung hindi pa po kayo nagsasubscribe, join our community. We would love to have you here. And happy talking and mabuhay!